Hi, welcome to the Reinvented Delaware podcast. And I want to just sincerely thank all of you that watched and left a kind and comment. And we were really moved by some of the comments and some of the enjoyment that many of you got out of our podcast. To be quite honest with you, we weren't sure that this was even going to work out. And
it was so much fun to go back through the comments. Like, we've been going through the comments. He looks, I look, and we're just getting all this encouragement. So fun to see you. So fun to hear the two of you talk. We love the two of you together. It's just been amazing. I cannot believe that we're getting so many positive comments. Are you surprised?
I'm very surprised.
Me too.
There's a saying that everyone that you meet today knows something that you don't know. And so everybody has value for that reason. And so it's just really interesting for me to share with you some of the things that they may come pretty naturally through life's experiences, but a lot of it is things that you don't know. And so we're happy to share that with you. And your comments just make it much more exciting to do that.
Yeah, it really does. So thank you from Steve and I. We just want to say a big thank you before we even start this episode. And then before we start this episode, let's chat about what we've been up to lately, because we've accomplished a pretty big project. Well, it was big in my opinion.
Well, it was a big project,
yeah.
And I think we've had several big projects going on all at the same time.
Yeah, so recently we built these window boxes out of cedar fence boards. Is that what they're called, fence boards?
Yeah, they're replacement fence pickets. So
yeah, and they were like $4 a piece
they're very inexpensive.
I forget where we got them. Was it Lowe's? Or
we got them at Lowe's.
At Lowe's. They were $4 a piece. We took 3 of them. How long are they? Like 6 feet?
Yeah, about 6 feet.
Okay, so they were 6 feet long. And we used 3 of them to make a 3-sided long box in front of each of our double windows. I can link that blog post down below so that you can see how to make them. And I think we have a video coming out. I don't know if it will be live when this podcast goes live, but either way, I'm going to get you to it. I at least have a blog post about it so you can see the whole project. But it turned out really good. What was the hang up? Do you remember the hang up that we had about those window boxes?
Well, we had discussed actually attaching them to the house, and I'm a little bit leery about drilling holes in the house, just for obvious reasons, letting water and insects in. So we decided to mount them to 4x4 posts.
Yeah, I think that was a really good solution because it looks like it's attached to the window, but yet we didn't drill any holes into the trim. We don't have standard shutters on the front of our home. It's like a wide trim that goes around the outside edge to frame our double windows. We have a pair of double windows on either side of our house, and it's a symmetrical look, and that's what we wanted to keep, but we did not want to drill into that trim because that would have been bad.
Yeah, well, behind the trim is the lumber, the plywood sheathing on the house, and so you don't want to puncture that and give bugs a chance to get in or give water a chance to get in. And
yeah.
A lot of times that damage is very slow in occurring, and you don't notice it until it's really, really extensive. So we were really trying.
So you
to
came up with
that.
a good solution. What was the solution?
So we took 4x4 posts and we notched them out the depth of the flower box, and then we put the posts in front of the windows. Everything's centered, and so the flower boxes sit on the post.
Basically on top of that notch in the 4x4.
Yeah, about an inch from the window, so they're a little bit of distance from the house, and then we put the posts in concrete, so they're sturdy. The wind we get some pretty big storms, nor'easters and hurricanes, things like that, so that's not going to damage them. And they're permanent, but not permanent. So if we ever decide, because Cindy often decides to redesign or she wants a new look. So if they need to be removed, they can be done.
You're welcome, and I'm sorry for always wanting to change things, but we seem to have fun doing that, right?
I think that is. I think I have fun doing that. So, if this needs to be changed, it's not going to be a monumental task. They're not in there forever.
Well, that's awesome. So what project do you have in the works? I know you have something big coming.
Well, I am anticipating a new workshop. So we are waiting for a pole building. We have the building permit. We are waiting our local environmental protection agency because we have a stream that runs through our property. They require the building to be a certain distance. So we've had to hire a surveyor. I didn't realize that there were as few surveyors in our area as there are, but we found one, and it should be either this week or next week. We get the survey, and then we're anticipating some of the supplies to be dropped off, and I think they're going to start construction towards the end of this month.
That's so exciting. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, in the meantime, I've had to clean out an existing shed. That's going to be, we gave it away, and so a guy is coming for that hopefully this week, and just the clean out process. Some of it was heartbreaking because I took some lumber out of there that I'd forgotten about and had to throw it away. So I really had
hard.
Well, we're going to talk about pricing for profit today.
Yeah, because some of the things that you had to get rid of in that shed, that workshop, were projects that we just never got to when we had our vendor booth.
Yeah.
There was that gun cabinet.
Yep.
And we remade a gun cabinet one time and put little shelves in it. It turned out really great. I'll link that blog post. But we found another, actually I think it was given to us, that gun cabinet, and we were going to do it again. We never got around to it. And then of course we closed down our vendor booth after running it for about 6 years. I think we had it for about 5 or 6 years, and we decided to just go the route of blogging and YouTube and now podcasting. So we were never able to get rid of that. So we sent it to the auction, didn't we?
We did send it to the auction along with some other stuff. We had an old barn door, and it still had a lot of the hardware, and we had thought about a creative use for that, and it just never got done. And so hopefully somebody got it. The auction was yesterday, so hopefully somebody got it and they can do something with it.
Well, we'll let you know. We'll keep you updated on our next episode. We'll let you know the outcome of that auction. Let's make a note and do that for the next time so we can keep everybody updated. So talking about projects and vendor booths and all that kind of thing, what's our topic today? You've come up with a great one.
One of the comments, someone had asked us in the comments to talk about pricing and how when we had our vendor booth that Cindy priced products, and I will tell you she is much better at that than I am as far as considering the costs and the profit margin and things like that. And I've watched her over the years as she's done it. So we're going to talk about some of the highlights. Just one of the things that came up is you have to determine what your time and effort is worth, and sometimes we overvalue that. Because it's very easy, I know with like woodworking, things like that, it's very easy to have 20, 40, 60 hours in a project. You're not going to get $20 an hour for that. I mean, you're lucky to get $2 an hour for that. So you have to consider the enjoyment that you get out of actually doing it versus the profit that you're going to recover from doing that.
Yeah, and I would have to say that we did not price items per hour. I didn't necessarily always think, okay, I'm going to work on this 10 hours, and for that amount of hours of work, I'm going to price it at such and such. I didn't really think in terms of that. The goal that I had when we were purchasing items to resell, to repurpose and upcycle and then resell, was mostly to purchase as low as possible, because I wasn't always sure how much time a certain project would take me. All of our projects were very unique. So it was hard on some of these things to calculate time. And a lot of the furniture that we didn't mind if the drawers were broken or had to be repaired. That was part of what we enjoyed doing. So did we think about, oh, it's going to take me 2 hours to repair that drawer, so I need to make sure I'm getting paid X dollars per hour? I didn't really think of it in terms like that. Like Steve said, a lot of it was the enjoyment, and that was part of the payment in a way, was the enjoyment of doing the project. But as far as profit margin is concerned, you've got to buy low so you can sell higher. And I have a rule of thumb in the back of my mind about how much money I would pay for a certain piece of furniture. Let's say furniture, for example. So a washstand. A lot of people know that that's one of my most favorite pieces of furniture is a washstand. For the most part, we didn't pay more than $25 or $30.
There were a few, then they were in exceptional condition that we paid a little higher for. But yeah, most of them we were under the $20 mark. So and they needed some work. I remember one had like 15 coats of paint on it. Structurally, it was good, but it just needed a lot of work to get that paint off.
Yes, yeah, definitely. So we can kind of talk about that as we move along. Before we do, and by the way, we're paying attention to some notes because we're of a certain age.
Yes.
Yeah, and we have a lot that we want to cover in this topic, so I don't want to miss anything. We don't want to miss anything. So we do over here off to the side. If you're watching on YouTube, if you keep seeing us, we're looking over here at our other laptop.
So our minds are like steel traps, but many things escape. So to prevent that, we're going to make sure that we're watching and following some notes.
Yeah, and honestly, his memory is way better than mine. Mine is the worst, but we're getting off on a tangent. So let's get back here.
So when you started, I know we started the Dave Ramsey plan about 10 or 11 years ago.
Yeah, maybe even 15.
If you're not familiar, there's a book. He's got several books. He has a radio. He has a podcast. Look him up, but he has a book called Financial Peace University.
Yeah, and another book called, and I love it because it goes right with us, Total Money Makeover.
Yes. And so it's just a budgeting plan, and it works. And Dave Ramsey's plan is to start now so that when you reach our age and you're anticipating retirement, you're in that fourth quarter of life, you have the resources and you have the things that you need to survive. So you're not out there thinking, boy, I have to work till I'm 97 in order to. So, but through that plan, you had a book that you followed for your business.
So within his organization, there was a woman named Christy Wright, and she wrote a book called Business Boutique. And it's the same concept that Dave Ramsey uses for your personal financial budget, and she applied it to a business. And I read that book. I just devoured that book, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
And she had a plan that do not go into debt for your business. And right out of the gate, that's what Steve and I did. From my previous job, I had a little bonus. We used that little bonus to get us started, and we have never had any debt. Any supplies that we've ever had to purchase, whether it be furniture, whether it be paint supplies, whether it be a camera to take the photos for our blog. We paid for it outright. We had all that saved up before we bought the thing. And I think that was one of the biggest things that I ever learned from that Business Boutique book. I'm going to link that book down in the description or in the show notes, because if you're thinking about getting into business, this is a book that will really be helpful and will help you to structure your business so that you don't get heavy in debt. Because what happens if you're in debt?
It creates pressure. Not related so much to the business aspect, but I once heard Dave Ramsey give a man, and he had called and he had this tremendous credit card and personal debt. And one of the things Dave Ramsey told him, and he was a professional, I think he was a lawyer or a doctor. With a substantial income. And Dave Ramsey told him to go get a lawnmower and go around the neighborhood and cut lawns. And then take the money he earned from cutting lawns and put that towards his debt. And when I heard that, it was you kind of get that picture of a guy in a suit and tie out there with a push mower. But it's good advice. In other words, you got yourself into this mess and you have to do what it takes to get yourself out. And that's going to mean hard work. And I think Christy Wright, her plan is the same way. But if you don't get into debt initially, you don't have that worry.
And that was a goal that Steve and I had with this business. We did not want any business-related expense to come out of our personal budget, and we stuck to that, and we have still stuck to that. We're still at that point. So when you're thinking about how to price an item, an important thing to do is to calculate all the costs involved with that specific item that you're going to upcycle. For instance, and I'm going to use furniture a lot because that's just an easy example, really, but we can branch off if we need to. But if I want to sell a piece of furniture, I need to think about everything that it's going to cost to repair and fix up that piece of furniture. For instance, the actual cost of the piece, transporting it home, storing it, which is another issue. If you don't have a space to store it, fortunately, we have a garage that we moved our car out so we could move my business in. That's basically what we did. But we also had a, what is that building called?
Carport.
Carport. Yeah, it's just basically a roof with without the sides. It's
Keeps
kind of
most
open-ended.
of the weather out.
Most of the weather off, and we just kept things uncovered. So we had our storage was taken care of. We didn't have to pay a storage fee. If you have to have a storage, what do they call those things? I'm losing my mind here.
Well, you can rent a storage bin
unit
or a pod. I
Yeah.
know the pods are things that I think they bring them to your house.
Yeah, but you have to keep that in mind because that is part of the cost of making over that piece of furniture. You also have to think about whether or not you need paint stripper, whether you need sandpaper, whether you need cleaner, whether you need a new sander or sandpaper or the paint supplies, primer, paint brushes. I mean, it's really endless, a lot of the supplies, and it does take some time to build those supplies up. A lot of those supplies we just have on hand. Like, for instance, when I needed a sander, right out of the gate of starting this business, I needed a sander. So you happen to have two. We were lucky there. But some of the tools that we've bought used, and that has not been a problem. We've used the used tools until we saved up enough money to purchase a new tool. And we've done that several times.
Yeah.
I bought you bought me for Christmas a chop saw. Now, not many women would want a chop saw for Christmas, but this one did.
And I think that gets down to also being practical. And, I really like Cindy with all of her fingers, so I was really nervous about giving her power equipment, especially those things, because accidents can happen really quickly. But she needed it because she wasn't able to always wait until I got home from work or until I had time to cut pieces of wood. So at Christmas time, just a natural thing. And like she said, it may not be, it's not flowers, it's not candy, but it's practical and it serves a purpose. And it was something that she would put to use almost every day. So.
Yeah, and we did that with a lot of those kind of tools, and that's kind of how we built that up. But when you're calculating the cost of what it is to what it will financially cost to work on a piece, those are the factors that you need to take into consideration and try not to overlook. Now, at the very beginning, you might overlook some of those things, but as you progress and move along in this business, try to make a mental note or even jot down a note of every supply that you had to use to accomplish the task of making over, for instance, that piece of furniture, so that the next time around you don't forget, oh, that's right, I have to buy sandpaper or I need to purchase this paint for that, because that will eat into your cost. If you have in your mind, all right, the piece of furniture, like a washstand, cost me $30, and the paint is going to cost me $20, so I've got $50 in it. Well, there are a lot of hidden costs that you need to think of. And if you don't, then when you go to sell that piece, those hidden costs eat into your profit, and you don't want to do that. I heard once, and I can't remember, it might have been on Shark Tank, if a business is not making money, you're not in business. You're losing money if you're not making it. So the idea of being in business is to profit. Profit's not a bad word.
Yep.
That's a good word, because if you're profiting, then you are successful, and you have to almost build towards that.
And I think people respect the fact that you're in a business to make a profit, and I think they respect it even more when your prices are reasonable. In other words, when they look at a project or at a piece that you're selling and anticipate the effort that went into making that piece, and then look at the price and say, yes, that's reasonable, I'll pay that. And sometimes, myself included, I will look at the effort that went into a piece and say, wow, that's way too high, I can't pay that amount of money. And so maybe somebody else sees it and says, I got to have it, and they do pay the price. But everybody looks at things differently. So when you are doing supplies, my father was great. He had an old Maxwell House coffee can. In fact, it's still at his house. He passed away, but and he used to keep all of the nuts, bolts, screws, anything that came up extra, he would put in this coffee can. I do the same thing. I know Cindy has she's more organized than I am, so she has an organizer full of nuts, bolts, and screws and things like that. So that is a way to diminish your costs, but also you want to try to buy in bulk those items. When Cindy mentioned sandpaper, so as you start doing, especially like woodworking projects, you're going to be using certain grits, certain styles of sandpaper. Buying those in bulk are going to save you some money. So you can anticipate ahead that, okay, I can buy a box of 50 and save $20 over buying a small package of 5 pieces. again, there's some things that you may not use very often. I'll use hinges. The hinges can be very expensive, and you may not decide to use the same style on each project. So you might not want to buy those in bulk. I know you have bought casters in the past and just bought them.
I have.
Yep. But we put casters on just about everything.
And the way that we did that, we didn't just go to the store, get on Amazon, and buy all the supplies that we needed right out of the gate. We built towards it. So I would sell a piece of furniture, and that profit, I didn't make a paycheck for the first year.
Yeah.
Now, we made profit, but I did not make a paycheck the first year. We just used all that money and just invested back into the business. Now, we were fortunate because we had learned how to live on the Dave Ramsey plan, and we learned to live on one income, and we'd done that for years. So we were pretty skilled at that part of it. So I didn't need to make a profit. And if you do need to make a profit, you're going to have to rethink all this, so you're going to have to work out those details. But what we did that first year, for the most part, I think it was the first year, all the money that we earned, the profit went back into the business so that I could get ahead on a supply of sandpaper. For instance, like he was just saying, instead of buying a package of 5, I would purchase a package of like 100. They come like of course it was more money, but in the long run it saves you money. And that's how we did it. I just used all the profits and turned it right back into the business so that I could get a nice build up of supplies that I didn't have to, pay the higher price by buying not in bulk. I couldn't get those words out.
So, and this is probably not something you're going to sit down at the kitchen table and come up with all at once. So it is good to keep maybe a journal or some notes, and as you incur costs, write that down, because there's always going to be those things that you don't think about. Most importantly, and the thing that I would tell you to take very seriously, because a lot of people don't, is taxes. Make sure you're putting money aside for taxes. The biblical verse of render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. We are, as citizens of the United States, obligated to pay fair taxes. And so make sure you're doing that. I know people who, I only make a little bit of money. I'm not worried about taxes, but that will catch up with you. And if it does, that can really be a devastating thing. So just pay your taxes, find a consultant, an accountant, do some research. I know we use some software for our business taxes. It's very explanatory. So, if there's a question about where does this expense go or where does this income go, it's really explanatory. And the IRS also has documents. I mean, their website is very helpful. And taxes can be somewhat complicated. Don't be afraid to ask. But I will say, an honest mistake is more easily forgiven by the IRS than a deceptive act of deception. So if you are, intently trying not to pay taxes on a certain thing, that is not going to be forgiven as easily as, I put it in this category and not that category, but I still claimed it. That those things can usually be worked out.
We're not tax professionals.
Yes.
One thing that we're very good at is repurposing furniture and home decor, but we are not tax professionals. So the best thing that you can do is to, contact your own accountant for your state and get that part figured out. And in that Christy Wright Business Boutique book that I mentioned earlier, she talks about that, and she recommends a certain percentage to keep out of your profits, or actually your net, so that you can keep that and held back. And we did that.
Yeah, we did
that right out of the gate.
And again, I know some of you listening or watching, you're in this for a profit. You need the income. This is how you're going to sustain your household. And that's or buy groceries. A lot of women in my, in the world that I work in, a lot of the women that are doing this as a side business, that's what they're doing. They're paying for their groceries with this kind of money. So and I would just caution you to try to project the most minimal profit that you can exist on at first, because you want to grow your business, but you can't go into it thinking. And I teach high school, so I constantly hear students, come out and, when I get out of college, I'm going to get a job. I'm going to make $150,000 a year. And the truth is, you're probably not. with some experience and some wisdom and some things like that, yes, your income is likely to go up. But just fresh out of college, getting into the workplace, you're going to be sorely disappointed. So build on your income. Kind of consider what it is that you need at the very minimal, and then build upon that as you progress. So just talk a little bit about the actual booth. And one of the notes I made is competitors, comparing prices to competitors. And I know you've done that in the past.
Yeah, that's a really good idea as far as pricing. And that's our main topic today, is talking about pricing. I know that we've also talked about some other financial considerations, but that's part of pricing, because we want to make profit in a business like this. So when you're pricing, you can also do this here. I kind of had a rule of thumb of how I price things, and I'll tell you that here in a second. But one of the things that I often did was I paid attention to what the other vendors were charging. I was not going to be able to go in, and I'm going to keep using a wash stand. That's a hard word to say, by the way. But I'm going to keep using that piece of furniture as my example. But this applies to all sorts of other pieces of home decor and furniture. But on a wash stand, if I could not go in there and offer, a small wash stand for $500 if my neighboring vendor is offering one for $150. That's just not going to work. So you have to kind of pay attention to your own market, and then you have to get a feel for it. That took us a little while.
Yeah,
I would say that we didn't start out of the gate overpricing. We probably started out of the gate underpricing, and I think that's pretty common.
I think that's a safer mistake to make, though.
It is. It's a safer mistake to make. And then if you realize, okay, things are selling too fast, because at first, if that wash stand sells really fast right out of the gate, you're like, oh, success, yay, it's out of here. But maybe it means that you priced it too low. So that's something to think about too.
Yeah, and
so I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just want to say, I know we have both found that our competitors are actually really nice people. And, we might put a piece in the vendor booth and price it, and another vendor say, that's a really good price. I had one of those, I just sold it last month, and I sold it for double that. And that makes you think, like, okay, am I underpriced? And you want to consider. And I've always told Cindy, price high because you can always come down. But if you can't put like $100 on a wash stand and then go back 2 weeks later and raise the price to $250, people are just not gonna deal with that. But you can start out at $250, evaluate. It's not selling, it's not moving, and cut your price a little bit, 10% discounts or a sale, things like that. And that was one of the things we were going to cover. If you find that your stuff is not selling, you really need to do an honest self-evaluation. For many people, that's very tough. But why? Maybe your style or the thing that you like is not what the majority is going to buy, and that's okay. I mean, there's things that I like that the majority of people don't. And I probably would not be able to sell that. But you got to ask yourself, why is my product not selling? So it's either because of the price, the workmanship, or there is some issue. Maybe it's not that style, the color, it doesn't resonate in your area. We have a very large beach community on one side of our state, on the east side, but on the west side, especially in the lower part of the state, it's all farm. So the decors are going to be two different things, and you have to market towards your customers. So some would come in and buy things of beachy colors, and some wanted the farmhouse look, the chippy, which Cindy's really good at. And so you have to evaluate and what is selling, what is not, and don't be afraid to change. You may say to yourself, yeah, I really like that shade of red, but that product's not selling. So on the next product, I'm going to change the color, I'm going to change the design, or whatever it is you're going to do. I think also importantly is, and I didn't realize this until Cindy got into the business, the time that it takes to dress up your vendor booth, because she was over there weekly doing Instagram lives. I think you did a couple of Facebook lives, and it was just kind of dusting off, and she would take products and move them around a little bit just to freshen up the site a little bit, and she'd come back with pictures. And just changing some minimal things draws a person's eye, and that's what you want. You want that person, when they're walking through that store where your vendor booth is, you want something that catches their eye that says, oh, I'm going to go look a little closer. And I find it when I shop, I will see something and say, wow, that's really cool. I want to see what else this vendor has. And then I'll take a more in-depth look.
Yeah, and let's get back to that pricing. I said that I would share kind of my little formula. And what I would do is I would take the cost of the item that it costs, like back to that wash stand. If it was $30, I would take that $30 and I would add the cost of the paint, because usually that's what I did. I would add the cost of the paint, and then I would throw in another $20. And for the most part, I multiplied that by 3. Now this was at the very beginning, before I had any idea of how to price. So that might not work out for you. So don't take that as set in gold. That was my learning curve. By the time I got to the more skilled at pricing, I had actually started to multiply by 5. So what I would do, and this might not work for you, it worked in our market. So back to Steve's point, you need to look at your fellow vendors and see what kind of prices they have on their items, because you want to be in that same market. You don't want to have sticker shock, for any of your customers to have sticker shock either way, and you don't want to undercut your other vendors, because that just does not help the whole store, as a whole. But by the end of this, when we stopped selling our pieces, I had actually started multiplying by 5, and that just worked. So I would take the cost of the piece, the cost of the supplies, the paint, the sandpaper, maybe I needed to use paint stripper, any of that, I added all that up, and for the most part, I multiplied by 5, and that worked. Now, I'm not saying that that's what you should do. I'm saying test that. It may or may not work for you and for your vendor spot. So make sure that you test that out. Don't take that as gold. That's just how I did it, and it did seem to work pretty well for that.
Yeah, a good friend of mine has a welding business, and he was in this bidding on a huge project for a big company here in Delaware, and he was scared to death. He put in his bid. The owner of the company, who I also know, stand-up guy, called him and said, you got the bid because you were really, really low. Now come in here and let's talk about your pricing. And so he went in and with my friend, and he said, you were way too low. I'm going to pay you more. So willingly, the owner said, I'm going to actually give you more than your bid because you really underbid this project, and worked with him on pricing. And I remember him saying to me, he goes, man, I was scared to death to give him. I thought I was going to be overpriced, and turns out I was thousands of dollars underpriced.
Well, and the item that he was selling was a very costly kind of piece. So that's very different from what we're talking about. But the concept is the same. So when I was multiplying by 3, I was underpricing terribly. And we lost some profit, but we gained knowledge. So that's the price of gaining the knowledge in a business like this.
I think you have to consider your location. As I just alluded to, we have a beach area, very touristy, people coming on vacation. They see an item, they're only here for a short period of time, and they might pay a little extra to take it home. Versus where Cindy's vendor booth was kind of the center of the state, so our customers were more locals who are going to price shop. So they're not only visiting our store, but they're visiting other stores as well.
We really could share more here. Honestly, maybe we'll touch on this subject another time, but we do want to be respectful of your time here. So I don't know. What do you think? Do you think we ought to revisit this topic?
Well, we're burning up 30 minutes, and so we're getting to the end of the time that we have allotted because we don't want to bore you. So yeah, if you have more questions, honestly, we have some more notes, but if you have more questions, we really want to kind of direct this towards you.
Yeah.
We read all of your comments, and I know Cindy
do.
comments on a lot of them. I usually hit the like thing. But Cindy actually goes back and comments. But we do read all of your comments. I get up in the morning and I go to the comments and read what's new. So we do ask us questions because we want to tailor this to you. But as we close out, because like I said, we're burning up 30 minutes here. What do we have coming up?
Well, before I get to that, let me just say, if you're not watching on YouTube, You can also email us, cindy@reinventeddelaware.com. I'm going to leave that down in the description, down in the podcast notes, so that you can pop over there and ask a question anytime you like, or you could pop over to YouTube and watch it there if you're interested, and then comment. And we want to answer your questions. We want this podcast to be interesting to you about what it is to repurpose and upcycle. Today, we kind of talked about the business side of it, but we also want to talk about if you just want to do this for your home, which is what we're doing now. We only upcycle for our own home. But yeah, we want to hear what you have to say. We want your questions, so go ahead and ask us. And as far as what projects are coming up, so I did an exciting thing this week. Did me tell you?
Yeah.
I got to interview a really big furniture makeover blogger and influencer. Her name is Du Dotson.
I've met her.
You have?
Yep, great lady with a lot of knowledge.
Yeah, so it's exciting. She's from Texas. That's my home state. So we had a connection there. We've met in person. I don't want to give the interview away to you, but that's going to be coming up soon.
That'll be
good. Or
good.
hold it. Maybe it might have already aired by now. If it did, I'll link it. I'm getting a little turned around on what's going live.
Remember the steel trap thing. So
yeah, we're of that certain age, and there you go. There's the proof of it. So what projects do you have coming up? I know you're going to continue on the shed. So what else do you have?
I have a good friend of mine. We're making an epoxy table. Ooh. So I built the table, and he is doing the epoxy. So I've never done one before, and so this is a learning experience. He's going very slow. This is going to be a wedding present for a family member. And so I'm learning a lot as we go through and watching the pouring of the epoxy and putting some items in. And I may actually, when I said I was cleaning out the shed and I found a lot of lumber that I'd forgotten about, and I had the idea that, wow, that would look really cool as an epoxy table. So I may venture
that'll be fun.
Out of my comfort zone and
neat.
Actually do something unique like that. So,
that's awesome. Well, as far as my future project, and I don't know if I've told you this yet or not, but we're going to be hanging some vintage chicken feeders as a hanging planter. I did.
actually bought the hangers.
Oh, that's right.
So,
we bought the hangers. Oh, they're here. That's right.
Yep,
they just came the other day. And I can't wait to show you about that. So I'll keep you updated. I plan to make a video about our front porch, and they should be in that video, maybe. Maybe we'll hang them this afternoon.
Possibly.
Maybe. We'll see. So that's it. So we're looking forward to that. And do you have anything else?
No. Again, we just want to sincerely thank everyone who has tuned in. We want to encourage you to go to Cindy's blog, reinventeddelaware.com. Watch her on YouTube. That's also reinventeddelaware.com. Look us up, ask us questions, and again, we look forward to presenting these. We really enjoy doing this, and hopefully we're giving you some information that you did not have.
So subscribe and follow along, and we'll see you next time.